Hi, my name is Kushal Shah. I'm the managing director of Ian Ventures, which is the VC arm of what used to be Quality Salad. Happy to be here. For me, my passion is talking to a wide spectrum of people to understand where they come from and to see what kind of problems and solutions they're working with. And I'm very happy to be here with the Voices of the Future.
We are genuinely fortunate, blessed, and lucky to have Kush in our office today. Kush is a great thinker. He's an entrepreneur. He has a vision to create new opportunities almost from nowhere. He has had a very kaleidoscope kind of mixed life and career and so on. And therefore, he is this beautiful mind as a voice of the future with us today. And we're very privileged to have him here today. Kush, good to see you, brother.
Thank you.
Kush, firstly, it's wonderful to have you, and I'm glad you're here. And I just see your career developing so beautifully, and now particularly with Ian and on the venture side, there are some very interesting ventures coming in, and you have potentially participated in the process, which is almost considered impossible, is to transform a big oil company or a platform, like an aircraft carrier into from a telco to a techco. And I think that's amazing. And the projects that you're coming up with, we'll certainly talk about them. But before we do a deep dive there, let's talk about you. Let's talk about Little Kush. Where does Little Kush come from? And anything that you remember from your early life that shaped you, guided you, inspired you, that's helped you to become who you are today?
So, Little Kush, I was born and brought up in Kenya. So I spent my first 18 years in Nairobi. And I didn't take a flight till I was 16 years old or 15 years old. So the first 15 years were shaped living in a very, let's call it generic setup, which was I would spend the radius of where I would rotate with my friends, with my environment was fairly small, but it was beautiful in the sense it was serene. There was comfort. I didn't have a feeling like I had major risks to manage. So that allowed me to be very stable at that young age. A few things that popped to mind. The first one was that from an age of about 7 or 8 with my grandmother, we would meditate from 5 in the morning. She would wake me up. We would go to what's called a Raj Yoga center and meditate at 5, 6 in the morning. In those days, meditation meant don't fidget. It wasn't just about what your mind is doing. It's actually what your body is doing. Yeah. So it was simple things. But it gave a discipline. It gave a sense of purpose. That would be on a Thursday, most Thursdays during the week. It wasn't every day. But that created a sense of purpose on a Wednesday night to say, I need to wake up early. And then from then on, I started competitively swimming. I started working with kind of extreme athletes, whether it was on the running track or on a swimming place, etc. And even though I wasn't necessarily an extreme athlete myself, but being surrounded by coaches and by athletes was interesting.
I mean, Kenya has produced some great middle distance runners. I could imagine Kush doing that.
When you see what they go through, and the effort they put and the determination in there, you realize you're a small pod. So they put their bodies and their minds through a lot of extreme discomfort.
Right. So that helped to shape you, and then you ended up in the UK for your studies. Tell us about that.
So the very first day at Cambridge, I remember, being introduced, meeting people, saying hello to them in the morning, which was hello means shake your hand, give an embrace, especially the second, third time you meet. But I was brought up in an environment, if you meet them the second time in the day, you do the same thing. And they found that very strange. Like, why are you shaking my hand twice? Why are you embracing me twice? And that was just the warmth we had. So I realized that, it's different customs, it's different way of being. But then that warmth that was brought by the second embrace became part of my red thread, became part of my DNA. And I felt that's important. It's different and surprisingly different because I didn't expect it. But it actually gives a very positive karma back.
Indeed, and I think we'll talk about it in greater depth. But it builds relationships, it builds empathy, it builds connection, it builds humanity, that touch and feel, especially in this world of technology. I think those early empathetic moments must keep you in good stead. And then you did something which I failed at, but you succeeded at. You went to did your chartered accountancy. You became a boring accountant. Was it because of your dad or your mom saying you have to be an accountant, lawyer, doctor?
No, not at all. To be honest, I took the easy route out. So I didn't apply for jobs till it was like, you need to do it when we were about to finish university. So I was like, what's going to be the easiest job to get? And the accountancy jobs were fairly straightforward.
Right.
I took pretty much the first job I got offered.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, that's great discipline, because I went in to do my accountancy because my parents basically wanted me to do something as a professional qualification. People of our background in color, we actually had that. And I said, but I am not an accountant. I mean, I'm going to be really bad at it. But I went through my first professional, and I finally actually failed my chartered accountancy exam. And of course, that was the first thing I ever failed at in my life. I was a super successful student. Everything was perfect, and boom. And interestingly enough, one of the things I said to my parents is, you gave me love, you gave me everything, but you did not teach me how to fail. Because it was all about winning and A's and grades and working in that competitive environment. But while I was there, I ended up working in nightclubs. I driving cars. And I share this story a lot. Is that in Carnaby Street, London, see, there's this little hole in the wall, and they do tea and toast at like 3:30 a.m. in the morning. So before I got my night bus at 4 or 5. I used to sit there, and I had prostitutes, and I had dustmen, and I also had an associate professor. And I'm saying, shit happens. Everybody's here. This is the microcosm. And Kush, that's when I learned about humility. That's when I learned about not judging people. That's when I learned about, stuff happens in life, and we need to find a way back, and stuff like that. And that started building my resilience. And in that failure, I learned a lot, and then hopefully that has kept me in good shape. But it's built my baseline of some of my humility and ethics, and part of my personality. And then obviously I did all sorts of things. I went back to Harvard Business School and this and that. So I did give my father a certificate so that he could show in the community that my son has arrived. So. But anyway, I mean, those are fun challenges in life at an early stage. So once you finished all your studies and stuff like that, what was inspiring you at that stage? Or was it just a job and make money and chase girls and, do stuff like that?
When you're at that age, the first thing that inspires you is get rich quick, right? Yeah. So everybody wants to be a millionaire and wants to be a millionaire quickly. So during university, etc. So there was always that kind of entrepreneurship spirit, and probably more than my colleagues. And that was coming out. And I remember the university professor, my tutor, kind of pushing me and saying, go with the flow. And then I started investing in small stocks and shares, etc. And he was the bursar. The professor was the bursar of my college at Cambridge. Okay. So at the end, when I had completely finished, he said, tell me, how has your performance been, etc. And this is where the humility discussion comes. So it wasn't about my performance of my actual portfolio, which was it was a few £1,000 portfolio. What was funny was during my interview process in one of the firms, which was actually an investment bank, I didn't get the job. They kept asking the same questions around round 1, round 2, round 3 about a particular use case. So what was very clear, it was a live use case. They were working on a deal, an M&A deal, and it was live. And there I was as a stock trader and thinking, they've given me data points where I know something's going to happen, right? And I'm going to take some action. So I took action, and it worked, and there was a return. It was a small, again, I put £1,000, and it became, £2,000 in a week. And I told my tutor the story, or the professor the story. I got a whipping. It was insider trading of some form, even though I was only capturing the data that came through the interviews.
Right.
And I wasn't really privy.
Yeah.
But that whipping was my first humility. Learn the ethics.
Indeed, and I think we'll do a lot about it. Actually, let me talk about ethics and trust. As a keynote speaker, as you know, you've seen me a few times. On my first slides, when I talk about the future and what's the most important thing in the future, and my first word there is trust, followed very closely by truth and ethics. And this sort of trifecta of trust, truth, and ethics and transparency is what, in my opinion, designs the future. We're talking about voices of the future and designing the future. And I feel very strongly that this is where we have the core foundation. What are your thoughts about that?
I'm going to mix the story a little bit.
Yeah.
You know, when you're going through your health tests, etc., people, especially call it the 50 health test, this is where you're checking your markers. And you're saying, I now need to monitor my markers over time.
Yeah.
So the way I see trust and ethics is markers on your consciousness. So you leave markers with people. And then they observe that over time. And they observe how those markers are moving one direction or the other, or there's a stability, etc. And they decide where to put you in the spectrum of good trust, bad trust, whichever way. And then I realized, going back to the handshakes, giving the handshake in the morning, giving the handshake in the evening, you begin to feel sentiment. You begin to feel if somebody's had a good day, bad day, because you feel the change in their own emotions. So these markers you leave are, for me, karma. And now I've been with probably 20 years of working with one community. We have met the same people over 20 years. In Dubai, I've been here 19 years. We've been together for about 10 years across multiple conversations and even done work together. This has happened in 20 years. So those same markers I've already started to get a good feel. And with founders, you start to get a good feel. It's not a short game, it's a very long game. So ethics and trust really is about what markers you leave behind on other people's...
It's a wonderful perspective. And one of the things I've been involved in about 6, 7, 8 years ago was a project on drones and creating a drone manifesto. And the idea was that, and one of my very naive suggestions was, well, why can't we create an environment where drones are not allowed to kill? And any company that creates a drone that kills will be banned and will be, out of the system. And because we are putting all the tech in there, and we just program it that it's just not allowed, it switches off. But the moment it sees a human being, it switches off. And guess what? The only thing, the 90% of the thing what drones are doing at the moment is killing. And it's very sad because whether it's Yemen, Afghanistan, Ukraine, Gaza, it's the same thing. Is that it's just given a lot of the colonial and empirical powers the ability to sit in their little environment in Arizona and bomb who the hell they want to bomb. To me, that is about that ethics piece, and to me, that is about drawing a big red line and saying, no, we will not do this. And it's very tough, but I think those guardrails need to be there. And the closest equivalent for me is nuclear fission. Because when we blew things up in Japan, but basically nuclear fission, we have in 80 years, there hasn't been an incident. Yeah. So all of the nuclear non-proliferation treaties and the 15 countries there is a line there. And the mutually assured destruction piece, the MAD piece, is also very much there. So somehow it's managed. Now we have something which is more powerful than nuclear fission, and that's AI, but more importantly, generative AI and AGI, where it is replicating and reproducing and recreating and learning by itself. So therefore, it's not even dead power. It's actually dynamic, which needs even more guardrails. And it needs a deeper element of ethics and there, because I see a lot of bias in there and a lot of issues. What are your thoughts on bringing that piece into it?
So Actually, I'll bring Ian into this discussion because although we're transforming from telco to techco, there is one deep, dark red line which we will not cross. And in fact, we will protect, which is exactly what you defined, that we're there to protect people's data. We're there to protect what is right and wrong. And that is a line we draw, and we're actually a line of defense as well, not just anything else. So when we bring new technologies in, we keep that ethical mind. And this is being set at the executive level, at the board level. This is becoming one of the cultural values that we're enforcing across the entire team.
Sure. Protecting data, I understand,
but even ethics, even the way we conduct ourselves, even what kind of technologies we'll bring and how we will work with those technologies, how we will protect the customer, etc.
Interesting. I'm glad that companies like yourselves are actually doing that, because I just feel that data is now taking a different shape, because it's not my personal physical data, but it's the insights that come together and all the monetization and value creation through that. So we are using data in a different kind of way, even though we're not selling raw data. If you go to Google today and say, can I have my data back? And Google say, yeah, sure, no problem. Because they've used the data to already, created the algorithms, and they've trained everything. Here's your data back. So where does that blurring line sort of starts coming in, that I'm using your data and I'm using your data to monetize, but I'm not using your personal data?
So this goes back to how do we teach children, right? So children understand black and white easily. What is right, what is wrong. For them, gray lines are like weird. And we come up with gray lines over time because experience, or my grandfather did this, my colleague did this was accepted, etc., becomes part of our mindset. But with children, it's simple. If you ask them about where the world is moving, they have a very clear answer. We should be against kind of global warming elements. It's very clear.
Yeah.
So what we can do with a 6-year-old or an 8-year-old is where the blurring lines should be defined, not what we do with a 40-year-old with multiple experiences.
Indeed. I was at the climate concert, which we did at the Dubai Opera last month at the end of COP. And the head of Amazon Earth, he handed over, as part of the overall thing, a globe to a 13-year-old kid. And it was all very, very symbolic that we're handing over the globe to a young person. And I think his name was Andrew. And I challenged him and I said, Andrew, you're handing over this to a 13-year-old. We're giving them a burning planet.
Yeah.
We're giving them a planet which is in a lot of trouble. And he's 13 years old. It's going to take 10, 15 years before he gets himself ready. What are we doing to nurture these people for the next 10 years or so at least? And are we taking the right calls? And to me, he wasn't able to answer that as effectively as I was hoping to, because it's a tough question. The hypercapitalism is really, really strong, and they'll keep making money, and that's it.
So the amount of brain power that we're putting into kind of solving the burning planet issue is a big change. So you asked earlier, did I go into accountancy because the parents pushed it? In the old days, we were pushed into medicine, engineering, business, the 3-4 categories. Now, the teachers, the schools, the parents, the universities are attracting people towards sustainability-related courses. And we see it. We see it from the age of 12, 13, a huge pull and a demand. So I think this will change. This might still take 10 years. But it is the right amount of brain power shifting there, yes.
It's not just about sustainability. And one of the ways I structure this is that we're living in a world of rapid technological transformation and exponential change. So anything that can be digitized will be. It'll be 1,000,000 times faster and 1,000,000 times cheaper. But anything that cannot be digitized, love, harmony, compassion, kindness, generosity, heart, soul, spirit, common sense, ethics, all these things will be 1,000,000 times more valuable. So a lot of the new learning and the new, for want of a better word, new degrees and qualifications that the younger people, and we should be hopefully nudging them towards that, is to be more human. as we become more technological, ironically, we need to be more human, and the technology serves us, but we use our human elements and make that something special. And you touched it beautifully with your kids. That's sort of where we are, is getting them into doing that.
Yeah, you know, they say we live here in Dubai. If 10, 15 years ago, and people would say, why would you live in Dubai? It's a concrete place, no culture. Yeah. And now you see a lot of culture forming, different forms, types of culture, but it's heavily enforced and supported, and it's community driven. And I think this is what kids are going through as well. They're starting to see a need for social culture in whatever format. Yeah. It's not just going to be the Instagram on the phone. Yeah. They see it, they feel it, they're scared of it, but they also love when they're physically together. And as my kids aged from teenagers, now they're in the 18 to 22, you can start to see that cultural element, social element, and that's driving them.
That's brilliant. A friend of mine, to just share a funny story with you, he's a top banker. And he calls me up and he said, Thai, can you please speak to my son? He's 18. And I said, no, but he's a really nice young man. What's the issue? He said, yeah, but he's going to university and he looks up to you and you're like his mentor and he sees your talks and things. And I said, sure, what's up? And he said, yeah, but he's doing a degree in psychology. And I said, are you serious? I said, psychology is a great degree for the future. Anthropology, psychology, ethics, philosophy. I said, these are great degrees. Yeah. No, he won't get a job. And I said, I said, when he's learning psychology, he will learn many, many elements. Human behavior will be such an important thing. So I think we need to start training our parents rather than our teachers and teachers as opposed to our kids by saying, you don't have to go to Cambridge only and you don't have to do medicine or engineering only. You can actually create new things because you're creating critical thinking and adaptability and resilience and all of those wonderful things. So what are your thoughts as a parent whose kids are now going and they come in and say, Dad, I want to do music, and you're saying, dude, what are you doing? How do you react to that?
It goes back to the spectrum of people you meet. So we've in my daily kind of weekly activities here, there's a bunch of sports people, there's a bunch of entrepreneurs, founders, there's a bunch of financiers, and there's a bunch of friends. Every single one of them is so different. Every single one of them brings up their children in a different way. I was expecting, probably 50% will all think in one direction. It's not true. Some people allow their kids as much freedom as they want. To innovate on their own, to be as creative. Some are very focused on studying and etc. Some are very sporty. So the kids and the schools, at least here, I can't say that across the world because I don't know that enough, are allowing enough freedom of mind movement, are allowing. I think I remember you 6-7 years ago how you say from a young age to an older age you reduce.
We're dumbing people down. The creativity.
I think now schools have learned that. Some of the schools are allowing a lot more freedom, so they're not locking these kids into a dumbed down environment. So I'm enjoying that relative to my youth, where that dumbed down was a process. Now it's no longer. It's much more open.
And funnily enough, I mean, we're dumbing ourselves down because of habit, fear of failure, training, etc., etc. I mean, our brain is still there, so we can literally go back and you're doing creative new things. The big anchor in your life is, from my perspective, that I see are two key things, and one of them is entrepreneurship and startups, and the other is technology and sort of somehow merging tech and people together. Can you share? I mean, you're also the founder of the Buy Angel Investors and stuff like that. So you were very, very early movers in terms of doing these type of things. So can you just sort of share a little bit of the entrepreneurial place that we are in now? I mean, it's still quite expensive to operate here and things like that. Are we in a good entrepreneurial environment?
So there's so many factors that filter into this. Let's start with technology. You have a few waves of technology. It was the chip wave, then the cloud wave, ERP wave, then cloud wave, now the AI wave. So these are massive waves that completely changes and transforms way business is done. So entrepreneurship, where you're riding these big waves, is always clear because you can disrupt the way of doing business. A taxonomy is quite well. So yes, from a wave perspective, technology wave perspective, we're in a good place. That's one part of the discussion. Second part is the entrepreneurs themselves. Are they experienced enough? Are they smart enough to find a way to work in that environment? And I think that there's a lot of maturity in many markets, including this market, because once you've had about 10 years of experience, you got people telling the story, you've got people who've done it twice, thrice, 4 times, you got founders or ex-founders supporting, being on the boards, providing angel money, etc. So that's a second good place. The third place is money flow, where money moves with liquidity. So the cheaper the money, the easier it is to find the money and invest it. So now that's a bad place. It's been a bad place since 2022, especially in the VC world. So valuations are downgrading, businesses are failing, people expect much more profitability versus just grow at any cost. So the business model has shifted towards that. So hopefully that means you've only got good ships, riding the waves, not any ship. Third, what was the fourth criteria? The type of business models we're supporting. So this is where a lot of business models were supported where there's a cap. Let me describe that. Sometimes these businesses make sense for a very niche population, for either the very high end or the very mass market, but they don't necessarily penetrate 100%. I think what we're now starting to see is opportunities where every individual, every human will be using one or two of these. Take it, for example, Microsoft Copilot. Eventually, yes, now they're pushing it at $20, but eventually $20 will become very affordable. And it should be available to the entire world at some point. And that for me is 100% penetration with no limits, no boundaries.
Right. We haven't seen that many unicorns coming out from this region, and I know that the leadership here is looking towards creating a lot of them. Both of them will be covered in Voices of the Future, both Kareem and Amazon. Is our ecosystem just not strong enough to be able to nurture these? Because what you normally see is yet another delivery app or yet another payment app, and I'm like, really, is this the innovation that we're looking at? Where's the true innovation coming out there, and what's the path to that kind of value creation?
So to go back to the previous question, the other was the legal and tax and other infrastructure to ensure that it's low cost enough or favorable conditions. I think that playing ground has been leveled in the region. So we do have decent conditions to open a bank account. All of the problem, the frictions.
Bank accounts okay now?
It's improved a lot.
Like with VO and people
exactly,
like that?
Exactly. So those are no more concerns. So let's call it the frictions of running a business. It might still be expensive because it's not a cheap place to live, but that's a different discussion. To go back to, are there enough? Is the market big enough? Is the disruptive innovation strong enough? Multiple things. The region has now started to attract, and over the last 2 years in particular, post-COVID, has started to attract entrepreneurs from around the world to set up businesses. We ourselves have invested in a business that's already become a unicorn in 1 year. And the founder moved from Singapore. He moved into mid-2022 from Singapore. So, it was a business that was probably worth under 100 million at that point. Now it's a unicorn in less than a year and a half. We're nurturing those kind of businesses. We're giving them the environment to thrive. They can be global from here. They don't have to be regional. They don't have to be local. They can be global. And I think that's what's starting to happen. You can attract talent that has all forms of knowledge base. I was speaking once to a very specific tech talent in the media space, and their base was in India. And I said, how can you make the base in Abu Dhabi? The cost structure must be so different. He said, yeah. The answer was, I only get the same type of profiles in India. In Bangalore, it'll be the same profiles. Here, I can attract a Mexican, a Filipino, a Russian, a Ukrainian, all in the same place, all working together, a lot more creative. I will never get, yes, maybe the big base of engineering skills will stay in Bangalore, but that creative engineering is going to happen here.
So you're optimistic that we're in the right direction? The trajectory is good?
Yes.
Excellent. Can we go to your experiences at EAND, particularly? And I use the golden rule from Google, which is the 70-20-10 rule. 70% of your time you're spending on your core business, and you're optimizing it, 10xing it within your business, and I dare say you're doing that. 20% is the edge business, new markets, new products, new creations, M&A, etc., which is effectively what you're heading. And then 10% is blue sky thinking, moonshots and stuff like that. One of the key things that I keep finding, and please tell me how you've done it in EAND, is that people buy or acquire or merge with great companies on the edge, and they bring it in and they kill them and they ethicalatize them or corporatize them or something like that, because you bought into a creativity and an agility and a speed and a mindset. And then you bring it in and you kill it. And that to me is one of the most difficult things that I'm seeing at board levels as I go around.
So the 70%, which is true for us, which is true for almost all large companies, is about protecting risk management.
Absolutely.
And it's about making sure you can pay those dividends
100%.
That your investors expect. So that is retained. And the protection, which goes back to the trust and ethics as well. So the protection is not just about the money side, it's also protecting the culture. So that's the 70% where we're going to be very protective on the revenue streams and the profit streams. The 30, the 20 plus 10 or the 20 plus 20, those streams are the risk streams where we're bringing in new ways of doing business, new risks which are alien to the 70 and the people of the 70 and cause discomfort, but that's on purpose. In our executive meetings, our CEO or group CEO thrives on that discomfort it creates, because this is the important part. Stretch the people. And I think this is, and so in my own personal time, I probably spend 30-40% of my time fighting the 70%, but they like it and they enjoy it and I enjoy it. And hopefully the consulting skills help in that part of it. But yes, others might say that's a waste of time. But that's part of the DNA.
No, that's interesting. And I call it an immune system, within a company, that anything gets coming from outside fights. And it'll push back, and the corporate immune system clicks in. And I've been on many boards where, one I did recently, 18 months into all of the work that I did, and they were all very happy with me, and I was presenting here and training there. And then it came to the board meeting and actually next year's for decisions and plans and business models and stuff. And the immune system clicked in and everything just stopped. And I said, dude, we were talking about AI. You keep asking for an AI strategy. AI strategy, it precedes, you sort of started with a data strategy. Can we have a data lake or a data warehouse to start with? It's a $250,000 expense. It's not the end of the world for the size, but it's $1 billion company. It's taken 9 months, 10 months just to get that one CapEx through. So that the immune system clicks in and really slows down. So
let me answer that, because your immune system's clicking in naturally. But if your brain was telling it not to click in, so we have an opportunity where some members of our board, including the chairman, are actually fighting that immune system or making sure that it's channeled in the right way. So they're supporting the risk appetite, supporting the fate.
The first thing I talk about in an immune system, and I go into a board, is I said, what are your immunosuppressants? So if you want to do a kidney transplant, you need to give immunosuppressants first, give the kidney in there, and then the kidney has half a chance to succeed. But if you don't do these immunosuppressants, then the chances of success are low. And part of the immunosuppressants that I do, one of them, which I know you will love, is that we've created shadow youth boards. Yeah. So, there were 7 people on the board, all over 55, all in finance and engineering and stuff like that. And so I brought in these 22-year-olds and 19-year-olds and stuff, trained them, got them into understanding compliance and risk management, this, that, and the other, and get them sort of board ready.
Yeah.
But they think differently.
Yeah.
And I remember, in one of our sessions, and we had 6 people regionally and 6 people globally. So I wanted that mix to happen. Otherwise, you get too myopic. So this girl sitting in London, and she works with one of the Amazon incubators and so on, and she's on the board, brilliant girl. And about 5 hours into the board meeting, she sort of, quick question, yes, of course. And she says, I've been sitting here for 5 hours and we've discussed revenues, compensation, we've had fights about stuff, but we haven't mentioned the word AI once. We haven't mentioned the word ChatGPT once. We haven't mentioned the word how this can change. The real shifts that are really, really, really happening. So what this dynamic has done, Kush, is that because they're not the 40-year-olds who might replace them, they're the 22-year-olds who will not replace them. Therefore, they're accepting them. And therefore, that's the immunosuppressant there.
That's interesting.
And that was my insight. You can sort of sit there and sort of say, I think we should be looking at this AI stuff. Or I've been doing this work on my ChatGPT. And then, guess what? All of the board members are being taught ChatGPT and prompting and questions by the youth. And that's shifted the dynamic. And suddenly, they're now saying, I think you're right. So we've created, various projects around that and so on. I think this should really become an integral part of and I call this a youth council. And the other one is I call a wisdom council. The over 75s, the over 80s, because they have they don't give a shit anymore. So they have a perspective which is different. I think we need that type of diversity other than just gender or nationality and things like that. So these are my immunosuppressants that I bring in. And then other things. The other one is that bring people in from completely unrelated industries, scientists and whatever. And initially it got a serious amount of resistance. Well, why do we want a scientist as a board member? She's female, she's 38, she's a young mother, she'll come in as a scientist and ask some serious questions. And that's what scientists do. They check hypotheses and they kick the tires and,
So what we're doing, which is the experiment, this CVC side, the corporate venture capital side is, people are scared if you own more than 50% of a company, because then your immune system kicks in. Yeah. But when you own 10% of a company, and it's taking technology risks, business model risks, you let that happen because if it fails or if it causes kind of noise, it's not your problem. Yeah. That experiment is working because the mother company is supporting this disruption. Yeah. How long it will work is a different story, and most CVCs typically have a success and failure rate, but so far that is a little bit like your 20-year-old in a boardroom.
Right. Taking a step back, I've presented at big boards and telcos and of banks, financial institutions, conglomerates, and so on. And I'm constantly, obviously, hitting the immune system structure. So that's the first problem I have. The second thing is, if somebody told me 10 years ago that Etisalat is going to be able to make that shift, I would not have believed it. Absolutely not. I've worked with old Etisalat, and I know exactly where things are. What was that juice, that catalyst that enabled you to make that big shift? And then I'm going to talk about the how you became from a vertical to a horizontal, vertical telco to a horizontal techco.
Several. There's no single, and I'm fairly new into this journey, so I'm only less than 2 years. Yeah. So obviously my colleagues have been around for a while longer. So one was, there is a kind of, in the last 5, 6, 7 years, there has been a whole new management team relative to the past. So it's not like the management team is fairly fresh. 2 is, there was a continuous dialogue around the missed moments, the WhatsApp moments, the Netflix moments, where we could have rode the wave, or they disrupted us. So that continuous communication and reminder that if you don't move on, the life will move on, the market moves on. So that's always been there. Third is communication to the shareholders to describe that we are going to do this, and getting their acceptance all the way through. And it's continuous communication to say, we do have to have a 70 plus 30. Don't forget the plus 30. Don't forget the plus 30.
Yeah.
And also we engage at the board level and otherwise with technology level, international technology level. So we're no longer just a regional company, we're a global company.
Interesting. I mean, Accenture's report and a couple of others say that the average global board has between 10 to 12% people who are technology qualified and technology capable, which is dangerous in today's world. I mean, it should be at least 30-40%, and there needs to be that. So just going back into your tech piece, and then we can start bringing it into a close, is that what are the types of new businesses under your wing, the edge projects that you have brought in, and what's the criteria you're looking at? Because you're in all sorts of new things. This is not a telco now. It's a different mindset. It's like a little playground for you. It's your dream job.
So I'll go. First, we look for those technologies which can go 0 to 100, 100% penetration. So fine, maybe it might take 4, 5, 10 years. Yeah. But we don't want to be plateaued at 20%, 30%. So that's first thing. And AI is obviously one of them, or AI specifically in certain verticals. Those verticals include healthcare, ed tech, and fintech. Yeah. So there are definitely spaces there. We embrace the media side a lot. So we expect customers always want to engage, and not just engage on one occasion, and continuously engage. So we believe media related is key to this. So that's another level. On the fintech side, we expect to be across the entire spectrum. It's not just payments, it's not just savings and other investment products, it's not just lending, it's the entire rails and the products. So we have a whole vertical around that, as it's called Young Money. So as the investment side, we're always considering ways to support them with opportunities where we buy a small stake.
So it's interesting. I mean, a lot of the industry sectors that you mentioned, finance, healthcare, so they are all very sort of data heavy, and connectivity that they require, and that's basically what you provide. So beautifully and seamlessly.
One live example, we haven't done the deal yet, we're in the middle, we'll be in Silicon Valley, is a way to change the way the internet works today. So it's a Stanford professor who's working on it. Basically, is kind of synchronizing clocks around the world, the clocks that sit on the network, to figure out where the bottlenecks and congestion, to reduce congestion on the internet, on the network. We would invest even in something like that.
Okay. Final question on the technology side, and we bring it in. Generative AI and getting into AGI and all of the issues. Where do you stand? Are you worried? What do we need to do? Where does this going?
So when we look at this, we try to find solutions opportunities where hallucinations is close to zero.
But actually, there's no hallucination. I mean, we call it hallucinations, mistakes, because they're not. Why are we humanizing?
Fair point. So, and that means that you target. I think you were saying earlier about the content. The ChatGPT would only search within a certain context, which you've layered for them, for example, in your book or something. So that's important, that you give it the right context to work with, and not stretch it beyond that, because that's where errors creep in. So for example, we've invested in a company called TradeStream, which is about trade finance, which has its own specific rules, very specific. And you got to bring that error rate down to as close to zero. For me, that's important, because what used to take 5-6 days can now happen in 3 minutes, driven by AI. That technology is critical to improve productivity of a huge number of industries and helps everybody. there's limited risk in that. I know I'm not answering the question.
No. It's fine.
But we will focus on those where the technology problems create a huge opportunity, and the impact it has on the value chain is massive. Where the risk attached to it is very low. That's what we focus on. When it comes to ethical risks, when it comes to kind of the computer taking over, I think we're gonna have to be in the game to understand.
Sure,
we can't sit on the side.
I mean, last year throughout summer, there was the Mission Impossible. There was there are 3 or 4 movies that came out. It was all about AI going rogue, and then we have to fight. And then obviously Tom Cruise, you're Tom Cruise, going out there making sure that it works. Dr. Osama Fayyad, he's in the book, and he talks about, it's called experiential AI. And he talks about the bridge between humanity and AI technology. And in his presentation, I found one thing very fascinating, because all of us are pushing towards technology. He said there's something called HITL, and he said, do you know that? I said, nope. It says human in the loop.
Yeah.
So the humans behind who are doing the monitoring, who are doing the editing, who are doing the bits and pieces, still critical, because that's what keeps the things sort of, they make sense. There's sort of some kind of meaning behind those things.
This is very important. I call it the agent.
Yes.
We need to have human agents more and more engaged.
Right.
In this space. What we're doing, next week we're in Stanford, we're in Seattle, etc., learning what's happening out there, ensuring that that's coming back to our training programs, that's coming back to how we stay engaged with AI as the human, because if we let it be on the side, it'll move ahead of us. So whether it's protective rails, or whether it's learning rails, or whether it's just being there, all of the above.
I mean, my young project manager, he comes up with output using ChatGPT and stuff like that, and I'm just saying to him, like, the word salad is good, but what does this mean? And why is it there? And how does this... So the critical thinking and the ability to make sense and sense making, I think, is one of the key new things that we all need to learn. Kush, I can go on forever. I mean, you're an amazing mind and a very creative thinker. Let's take you, because we've been talking about longevity just before we started. Let's put you in a time capsule and take you to your 100th birthday. And so, we had little Kush, now we had older Kush. What are we celebrating? What's happening?
When I was 8 or 9, the drive to the airport, you would pass giraffes crossing the road, literally. And this is in Nairobi. Of course, that doesn't exist anymore. That it was wild and free in that sense for everybody. I would love it that in the next 50 years, we let the environment, nature, come back as a beast. And it's not just the human in the loop, it's the nature in the loop. That it's given its freedom to thrive again. And so I hope we'll be celebrating that.
Amazing. What a beautiful way to end this. Kush, absolute pleasure. Thank you very much indeed. And thanks for all of the wonderful things you're doing. Very grateful. Thank you.